Okay, so welcome to 4.3 video notes. And yes, 4.3 means Unit 4, Lesson 3, and the topic of this will be graphing proportional relationships. So now, in front of you, you should have this paper. It may be orange, maybe white. Doesn't matter. It's just a Unit 4, Lesson 3. Please take this moment to write your name, date, period. And one more for this unit. You would need a ruler because you will be graphing during the video lesson. I forgot to mention that last one. This time I remember. Please pick up a ruler. Okay, if you're ready, then I'm going to start the lesson. So this one, it will be graphing proportional relationships. And I'll briefly explain that in 7th grade, you spend a lot of time talking about proportions. And now we're going to talk about graphing them in 8th grade. Now we're going to join these two together to create a superpower lesson, which is this one on graphing proportional relationships. Let's see what it says here. It says when two quantities are proportional, this relationship can be represented by the equation y equals mx. And the graph of y equals mx, it passes through the origin. So if you look at this line here, the blue line, that's the graph for equation y equals mx. They graphed it for you. And since it says it passes through the origin, they showed in the picture of the line going through the origin, which is 0, 0. And another thing you can notice is that that's the point where it goes through the y-axis. And the name of the point that goes through the y-axis is called the y-intercept. And this line goes through the y-axis at the origin. So when the graphs are proportional, the y-intercept is going to be the origin. So in this one, the origin is the y-intercept of the equation y equals mx. That's another fact that you can remember. So basically, a couple things that I want to briefly go over with you. If the relationship is proportional, and it's key, it has to be proportional, then you have an equation that's y equals mx. And the graph is a straight line, and it goes through the origin at 0, 0. But it also goes through another point, and that another point is going to be y1 comma n. So you have a point at 0, 0, you have another point at 1 comma n. And whatever that n value is, it's going to be the y value of the point. So for example, if you have an equation y equals 3x, it's proportional because it's in y equals mx form, so it's proportional. And you have a line that's straight, and you have a point, which is the origin. The line goes through the origin because it's proportional, and it's going to be another point at 1 comma n, and in this case the equation n is 3. So you have a point at 1 comma 3. That's the fact for proportional relationship. And I would like you to make a note of this if you don't have it. It'll be very, very important for this lesson. Okay, so let's look at example number 1. It says the cost y in dollars for x gigabytes of data on an internet plan is represented by the equation y equals 10x. Graph the equation and interpret the slope. So it says the cost is in y and gigabyte is x value. And the equation is y equals 10x. So is this proportional? Yes, it is, because the equation is y equals mx form. It looks like y equals mx, except that n is 10 in this case. And what we have to do is we have to graph them, and we need to explain what the slope means. So first, when we graph anything, we need to label the axes. And here, we don't need negative numbers because we can't have negative gigabytes, right? We can't have any negative gigabytes. So, let's see. We know that in the equation up here in the notes, y equals mx. And it says m is the value of the point it goes through. In this case, m is 10. Let's write it. That's the m, and m is 10. And it's proportional, so it goes through the origin. And since it goes through another point at 1 comma m, and m is 10, so we have a point at 1 comma 10. We have the 2 points I know that are on this line. Now one thing is that you can also use this table. I'm not going to use it, but if you need to, you may. For example, instead, if you can't come up with these points, just use a table. What if x value is 0? If you have 0 gigabytes, then how much dollar is that? Well, it's going to be 10 times 0 because x is 0, and 10 times 0 is just 0. So if you have 0 gigabytes, you pay $0. You have a point at 0 comma 0. If you use 1 gigabyte, that means x is 1, so now you have y equals 10 times 1, and 10 times 1 is 10. So just for using 1 gigabyte, you have to pay $10, and you have a point at 1 comma 10. And you can do that for all x value, any x values. You can test 2, you can do 3, you can do 4, and come up with all the y values and come up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points and plot them. You can do it that way too. Doesn't matter. But if you know that proportional relationship has 2 points at 0, 0, and 1 comma m, that could be easier. So now I have to graph them, but we need to label the axes. So I'm going to label the axes, and you may pause the videos to quickly do them on your own. Label the y value, x value, and plot the points, draw the line, and you can do them. Okay, and voila! That's how your graph should look like. You need to label the x, y value represents the cost in dollars, x represents the gigabytes, and all the grids labeled. I have the line drawn with ruler, it's straight. I have 2.00, 1 comma 0. I drew the line, and I labeled the line as y equals 10x. That's all you have to do. Now, how are we going to explain the slope? Well, let's find the slope of this line. It's rise over run. So we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're going up 10 units, so that's plus 10. And then we're going to the right one, so that's positive 1. So basically our slope is 10 over 1, which is 10. And wait a minute, y equals mx, and m is 10. See, from the graph, we confirm that the 10 represents the slope. Alright, so then what does it mean in this problem? Okay, let's break it down. So, m represents slope. And we know that slope, or rate of change, is change in y over change in x. And in this case, the y value is the cost, so it's going to be change in cost. And the x value is the gigabyte, so it's going to be change in gigabyte, and I'm just going to write giga. And our slope was 10 over 1. So what does it mean in this problem? This means you pay $10 because the y is a cost. And what does x represent? X represents the gigabytes. Good. So if it's 1, that means it's 1 gigabytes. So basically it means 10 over 1 means, and I'll bring it, you pay $10, if I label the units, $10 for 1 gigabyte. That's what that means. So I use the numbers in the slope and the labels in the question to help me write this interpretation. And yes, you have to do the same This is always the drill when you interpret the slope. You need to find the slope, explain what the slope means, meaning using the labels, the units from the problem to explain. Okay, very good. So I'm going to stop the first video here now. We're going to meet back in example 2 with starting with video lesson 2. Make sure if you have any questions, you write them down so that you can ask me. If you need to, you can go back to the beginning of the video to review anything that you didn't really quite understand or you want to go over again. Okay? Otherwise, I'll see you in video number 2.